Welcome back to another episode of the Suits in the Stadium podcast. I am your host, Casey Coleman. Joining me on this week's episode is Karina Herold. Karina is currently the president of SH Advisors, as well as an adjunct professor at Cal Lutheran University. Really enjoyed my conversation with Karina. I think one of the biggest things that stuck out from our conversation was when I asked the question about work-life balance. It's really a question that I ask every guest, and it seems like every guest has a different answer. Karina was no different. Just with what she shared about the idea of removing the idea of balance from the conversation, maybe using a different word. She mentioned maybe blend, work-life blend, because balance is this thing that's very hard to achieve if we ever achieve it. She also talked about how some things that may be important to one person may not be important to someone else. And so really having to try to find that blend of what works for you, what doesn't work for you. You know, she mentioned her husband is also in sports, and so maybe it's a little easier to be around sports. Her kids are involved in sports, and so maybe that makes it a little easier. But really enjoyed just her thoughts about the idea of work-life balance or work-life blend. Overall, enjoyed my conversation. Hope you enjoy my conversation with Karina Herold. Folks, please help me welcome in this week's guest, Karina Herold. Karina has previously spent time with the Los Angeles Sports and Entertainment Commission, as well as Pepperdine University, and she is currently the president of SH Advisors and an adjunct professor at Cal Lutheran University. Karina, how are you today?
Hi, Casey. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Super excited to have you. Last time we saw each other was at the PDP Summit. Lots has changed for you since then, so excited to jump in and just hear about the journey so far.
Thanks for having me. It's great to see you. And you mentioned the PDP Summit, and you were one of 30 or so individuals that were selected to join us at the Los Angeles Sports and Entertainment Commission on our journey of professional development in the sports industry. It was great to have you in class, and I'm so proud of you and all the things that you have done and all the things that your classmates have done in the last, 6 weeks or so since we last saw each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yes, things have changed for me, but all for the better. Still firmly in the live event operations world, which is what I love to do, but get to flex my teaching muscle a little bit, which has been something that has always been important to me. As you know, you got a little mini 1 week snippet of some of my favorite things to talk about, but now I have 15 weeks in a semester to be able to help students who are interested potentially in getting a job in sports. So it's been a fantastic journey. Happy to still be working in event operations and major event operations, but also helping to develop young people.
Absolutely. We're going to smush a 15-week course into 30-minute chat here and take what we can get. We'll jump back to the very beginning. What pivotal experiences in your education or early career helped you realize the sports industry was the right path for you?
Well, I have played sports my entire life, so it's kind of the typical athlete to business story. I played basketball in college at UC San Diego. And when I was in college, I just picked up as many kind of odd jobs as I could. A lot of my teammates did the same thing. So without really thinking about it or being intentional about it, I was working event operations. I worked facilities. I worked setup. I worked teardown. I was a marketing intern, which is so funny. I remember some of my jobs included counting T-shirts after games because we didn't have a very sophisticated inventory system. So we'd have to do math in that way. How many T-shirts did we sell? I don't know. Go count how many we had. So those types of things I remember very well as a student athlete. I also got involved kind of on the administrative side on something called the Student Athlete Advisory Committee, or SAC, which every Division 1, 2, or 3 NCAA institution has, which is kind of like the student council of athletes, I think is the best way to put it. I absolutely loved it. And I actually did 4 years on our SAC, and I was the president in my last year. So without really thinking about it, I was already starting to create experiences that would be the foundation for my career in the sports business. And as you mentioned previously, I have spent a significant amount of my career in college athletics. So it was something that was just my everyday, and my everyday turned into what I get paid to do or what I got paid to do
Sure.
when I worked in college athletics. So those experiences, not only as a student athlete playing, but also being involved in the athletics department as an intern, as the president of SAC, as a representative really for the athletic department in the greater university ecosystem. That is really what solidified for me, hey, you know what? I remember my athletic director sat me down and said, there is a career that you can do what you're doing for the rest of your life. And that was a pivotal moment for me. I went to a very science specific school, and all of my friends were going to be doctors and are doctors right now, very successful ones. And I'm so proud of them. But it was very apparent early on that my brain did not work that way. And perhaps I should find something that I was passionate about. And so events, so like logistics operations, that's something that I've been doing forever. From planning parties for the athletes when you probably shouldn't have, to planning conferences and things like that. That has really dovetailed into kind of major event operations, which includes the Super Bowl, college football playoff, and other major events that I've worked on.
Yeah, quite the upgrade from player parties to the Super Bowl and college football playoff. So
We still party; it's just a little bit different now.
true, much bigger party.
That's right. That's right.
In the ever-evolving world of sport management, how do you stay updated and continue to learn beyond formal education? Are there any ongoing educational experiences or resources you recommend?
I read all the time. This is something that I was just chatting with a good friend of mine who works in sports as well. Before I get out of bed, I have already read the Sports Business Daily. I have already read Front Office Sports, and I have already read the D1 Ticker. So these are snippets, of course. I'm not reading full articles, but I will have skimmed each one of those periodicals in my email before I even start my day, so that I know what is ahead. So that if someone that I know has had some type of a career moment or a product launch or something, I'm able to kind of line up who am I going to reach out to today to talk about the day's news. That has really helped now as a professor, because I start every class, as my class knows, with what happened in the sports business today. And we talk about how volatile the sports business is, and that's why it's so intense but fun, because it's always changing. And what happened yesterday could be completely different with what happens this afternoon.
Sure.
And so we have to consistently and constantly be checking what's going on. So you don't have to necessarily be formally educated, although I am somebody who is a proponent of higher education, obviously as a professor, and a proponent of master's degrees and terminal degrees. I think that it's higher education gives it gives you a leg up in a place where now there's a lot of competition, right? In case I
Yep.
don't have to tell you, for
Nope.
entry level jobs. And so if you can articulate or show that you think a little bit differently, or that you've been trained a little bit differently, I do think that that gives you a leg up. And as you start to look at mid-manager, mid-management, senior management positions, you'll see that either an MBA, a JD, or something similar is required now, not just recommended.
Yeah.
But there's ways. You don't have to, certainly not. This is a very experiential industry. Your experiences actually mean much more than your academic pursuits. However, there is a way to marry the two, and it's important to know what's going on, not just weekly, not just monthly, but daily, because
Yeah.
everything is changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Great insight there as far as education and all those things. Transitioning a little bit, but kind of on the same level of education, what advice would you give to individuals who are considering a career in sports, but may not have the traditional sports-related education and work experience background? How can they leverage their existing skills and knowledge to break into the industry? I personally put in this question because this was me prior to starting the program at Long Beach State. My undergrad, not sports related. My previous work experience, not sports related. How do we kind of pivot that to relate into sports world?
I should be asking you that question because you've successfully, albeit it was a difficult journey, you've done it.
Yeah.
But you've probably heard me say before, I think the most transferable skill is sales. So if you have a career in sales, or you have a career in business development, or just relationships or customer experience,
Yeah.
then I think that it's an easy story to weave how your experiences connecting with people and or selling to people will easily translate to filling seats in a stadium and or coming up with brand partnerships, etc. That's probably the easiest transferable skill. That's probably there is probably the most opportunity in the sales industry in the revenue generation side of sport.
Sure.
However, that doesn't mean that's the only place that you can transfer skill, although it is kind of the easiest way to get in.
Right.
Inside sales positions, those people are looking all the time for salespeople. And if you can sell and if you can generate revenue, there's always going to be a place for you on the team.
Absolutely.
Another one that's a little bit softer is, I think, content creation. So I do have a marketing background and I started my career in marketing. And whenever I get asked the question of like, what skill do you wish that you had? I always say, I wish that I can create content the way that a lot of my colleagues can. There are some incredibly talented designers and video editors out there who can turn an infographic or cut a video very quickly and upload it. And as
Yeah.
you know, in our industry, it needs to be done in minutes.
Yeah.
And so somebody could be capturing content on the sideline, and within 35 seconds, I can view it on one of the several social media platforms. So
Yeah.
being able to create content, social media managers now, there's kind of a meme going around that says social media managers are now content creators, copywriters, photographers, videographers.
Yeah.
You're no longer just coming up with innovative
Yeah.
ways to make a post, but rather you're responsible for creating the A to Z to that post. So I think content creation is another place where if you have a specific skill, or you're a designer, or you have that creative side, there is a space for you. And those jobs are also critically important because any storytelling element, I think, is part of the sales cycle.
Sure. Yeah. No, great insight there for sure. Transitioning those skills. You've worked approximately 15 years so far in the sport management field. To what or to whom do you credit your longevity in the sports world?
I think you're the only person who's actually added it up for me. So when I saw 15, I was like, wow, okay. I am as old as my
I just
birth
use
certificate
LinkedIn.
says.
You started at LASIK in 2008. So,
um, yeah, the longevity of how you can stay in sports for that long. I think you know this. It's not a job for me. It's a lifestyle for me.
yeah.
So I could not, and I could not envision my life any other way. Sports is critically important to my family.
Hmm.
My husband also works in sports, coincidentally. We are a sports family. That doesn't necessarily mean that I play sports anymore, although fitness is important to me. But there's always sports on TV. Our children know what we do. They have reaped the benefits of several field passes and and backstage passes to
Yeah,
several things.
sure.
There was a point when my 11-year-old son, when he was little, we would go to crypto.com arena and he would wonder why he couldn't go into the locker room at a Lakers game. But mommy, I did last time. Well,
Yeah.
no, not this time, kids. So, um, so my kids know what we do. And I think that's probably why, because I couldn't imagine my life in doing anything other than working the way that I work and with whom I work with. And so I think that just makes it that much, I don't want to say easier, um, but it's just what I do every day. So I just get
Yeah.
up and this is what I do. Like I said, I read about the sports business for 25 minutes before I even start my day and
Yeah.
see my children. So it's just something that I'm passionate about it. It makes sense to me. I love talking about it. I love experiencing it. Experiences are really important to me, which is
Yeah.
why I work in the live event space. Creating those types of moments for people and memories for people,
Yeah.
it's really important.
Yeah. Absolutely. 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 Transitioning to the advice portion of our conversation, what are the key skills or qualities that you believe aspiring sport management professionals should focus on developing to stand out, as we've already mentioned, in a very competitive job market?
I'm going back to sales, as you
Yeah.
know. I mean, there are so many. I just did my sales seminar with my students, and I think we said something like, in a typical sports environment, like a team environment, there are up to like 40 different jobs that have to do with sales.
Yeah.
And the other side, which is really important, community and marketing, maybe there's like 9 or 10. Right. And so I
Yeah.
think I'm always going to push sales. I'm always going to push sales skills. I am always going to say it is critically important for you to learn to not only sell yourself, but to learn how to connect with other people and tell a story so that they do something.
Yeah.
Whether that's buy tickets, whether that's buy a sponsorship, whether that's buy merch, right? Whether that's tune in, watch something. If you can do that, whether you decide to work in sports or you decide to work in something else,
Yeah.
then you are going to be indispensable. And that's what you want to do. You always want to be in a position where, should something happen and we're in some kind of an economic downturn, that you're on the right side of that.
Yeah.
And you've seen a lot of layoffs in tech, and you've seen a lot of layoffs in media. And the people that typically make it are those who are generating revenue. And so if you can at least learn, if you can at least start there, you might not like it. It's not for everyone, as we know. It's very difficult. Hearing no 100 times a day is very difficult, and I understand that. However, if you can at least learn the skills that it takes, you will be in a position where you can pivot to what makes you happy or brings you joy. And that could be that could be community impact, that can be anything. But at the end of the day, you have to raise money. Even if you're on the impact side, you have to raise money. I've worked for nonprofits my entire career. We know that you have to raise money.
Yeah.
There's a donor base that you have to cultivate. There's a season ticket holder base that you have to cultivate. Without money, there's not much that you can do to help the community. And so I'm always going to say sales, 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 sales. That is the skill that I think will translate the most broadly and give the most opportunity.
Sales, sales, sales.
Sales.
People listening to this podcast are being inundated. The guest before you is in sales at the Rose Bowl, Megan Gonzalez, and she pushed sales as well. So for those of you looking for a job in sports, sales is the answer.
Yeah, we're not
for
lying. For some, yep.
Not for me.
Or at least sales training,
There you go.
Just learn how to sell. You do a phenomenal job of selling your podcast, asking
Thank
guests
you.
to come up. There's different ways that sales skills translate. So.
Sure. Just not selling tickets for me. Anyway, the sports industry is known for its high pressure moments. You've obviously worked a few high pressure events, as we mentioned before, college football playoffs, Super Bowl, things like that. How do you maintain composure and make strategic decisions during intense situations?
Ooh, Casey, I think you've heard me say that you can only control your response to your environment, right? So there's going to be things, and from an event operations perspective, when I'm on a team and we're coming up to a very intense week or 2 weeks of a global event coming up, we always talk about how we can only control through preparation our plans. We can only lay them out as best that we know. And then we can only control how we respond to when they blow up, because they will blow up, right? Because we cannot control the environment.
Yeah.
So the only thing that we can control is our response, and to assume that the best laid plans, there will be adjustments. That's our job, right? Our job, yes, half of our job is to be prepared and to set plans and to be in intense situations. But the other half of our job is to pivot and to have the confidence and to have the experience to know that your intuition and your gut is usually correct. And when you have to make a quick decision, that you have the experience and the confidence and the knowledge to make that decision. And sometimes it's wrong. Hopefully most of the time it's right. But through solid relationships, solid team building, and trust, typically if you have a support system around you and you make that decision, that intense situation can be remedied. That could be emergency situations, that can be security situations, that could just be, hey, it rained. It rained and certain things, we couldn't have certain things
Yeah.
because can't control the weather,
Right.
right? Can't control a blowout on the field. Can't control, all of the things. I can only control what we plan for. And so in those intense moments, you just have to have trust that you know what you're doing. You
Yeah.
have to have trust that the people around you know what you do, what they're doing, and
Yeah.
the trust within each other. And everything goes back to relationships and team. Nobody is out there by themselves. And so when you have the right information with the right people, um, then typically those intense situations become less intense because you trust each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've implemented that team around you to know that they know what they're doing and can
That's right.
do their job.
That's right.
Sticking on that, just connections and team aspect. Speaking for myself, and I'm sure speaking for you as well, we didn't get to where we're at on our own.
Mm-hmm.
We had different people and mentors that we leaned on during our journey. Curious if you had those, and how you would say they best helped you in your journey so far.
Well, you know how important mentorship is to me. I participate in formal mentor programs. I participate informally as serving as both a mentor and a mentee. Um, I've created mentor programs, as you are hopefully still actively a part of. And I could not get where I am today without a group of family, friends, former coworkers, former bosses, um, even people that I've worked with that may not necessarily look like mentors or be in a quote unquote position
Sure.
that you may think are mentors to me, but relationships matter so much to me, and I trust the opinions of those around me, regardless of age, experience, or what have you. Um, and I could not do what I do without a support system.
Yeah.
Um, my kind of personal board of directors is probably a little bit too big, but that's how I like it.
Yeah.
And I'm just thankful for everybody. Like I said, family, friends, former coworkers, everybody around me. Um, they all pour into me in different ways, and I'm
Yeah.
thankful for that.
Yeah. For sure. We're definitely not here on our own. We have great
Mhm.
mentors. One we talked about for me off camera before is Bill Schumard,
Yeah.
formerly a Special Olympics professor at Long Beach State. Actually
Mhm.
helped found the program at Long Beach State.
Yeah.
So they're definitely vital. Sticking on that community piece, another word that gets thrown around, not just in sport management, but just kind of in the workforce, is the idea of networking. It's very crucial. It's how we build relationships. It's how you and I met at a
Mhm.
PDP summit,
Mhm.
networking with the different classmates that I had as well. How can individuals new to the field effectively build a strong network in the sport management sector?
When we talk about networking, one of the things that I try to tell students or young professionals is you don't have to necessarily start with traditional networking groups or go on LinkedIn and try to, connect with as many people that look like someone you want to talk to as possible.
Yeah.
Really, you should start with those around you.
Yeah.
And so there's a few people that are really, really good friends of mine who happen to work in sports that I've known since childhood.
Yeah.
We did not know we were going to be working in sports together. We played basketball together, or we, went to school together, or what have you. And we stayed in touch through this entire time. And now these people are not only on my mentor team, right? Like mentors to me, but are doing incredible things here in LA in the sports market. But we
Sure.
started as 15-year-olds as friends.
Sure.
And so to that end, I would say, look around you first. Who are your friends? So who's the company that you keep?
Yeah.
And then who do they know that can help you? So if you're crystal clear on what you need, who does your roommate know? Who does your cousin know? Who does your uncle know? Start small and
Yeah.
start familiar. And you'd be shocked at these kind of warmer introductions instead of the really tough, cold LinkedIn connections. And LinkedIn's incredible, but
It is.
it's starting to get to a point where, if there's no personal connection or someone doesn't know you, the thought that you might get a reply back is going to be harder and harder. And so who are those warmer, those more familiar people in your life who might be able to get you to the next level or to that informational interview? And then that informational interviewer might say, you know what, you should talk to this person. This person would be great for you. And that's how networking starts.
Yeah.
And then the onus is on you to continue the relationship. And that's where it sometimes ends, right? And so what you can do to stand out is you can continue to connect back with that person. You can find those connection points. Within that conversation that you had, what was something that you remember? And then can you come back to that? That's why it's so critical to read, right? So if you're reading or you're scanning what's going on in the industry, was there something that happened within that person's company or within that person's industry or specialty that you can say, hey, I saw this today in the Sports Business Journal, and it made me think of you. I hope you're doing well.
Yeah.
Or I saw XYZ team had a big win yesterday.
Yeah.
Or I saw that this sponsorship was announced. Whatever it is, make sure that you are connecting and reaching back.
Yeah.
That could be once a quarter, every couple of months. That could even be, a couple times a year. Whatever it is, that's how you build a network, right? It's not just amassing how many conversations you can have, but how many people remember you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, following up, maintaining those relationships, cultivating them. As you mentioned, it's not just the LinkedIn connection, because you could easily send 100 LinkedIn connections in 60 seconds. They really carry no weight. But yeah, you got to maintain it. I think that's great. Next question. Really looking forward to your answer on this, because haven't had anyone that's had a direct answer. A lot of great answers, though. Maybe you have the answer, maybe not. What is the key to maintaining a good work-life balance? How do you not get overwhelmed with your career and still make time for family and friends and things you enjoy doing outside of work? I know you previously mentioned sports is your life. Your husband's in sports. Your kids are around sports. But I'm sure maybe there's things you enjoy doing outside of the sports world, or family time and just having those different commitments. Curious what that looks like for you.
So I get the work-life balance question a lot as a working mom in sport, especially when I worked in college athletics. And the first thing that I say is I don't use the word balance in my vocabulary, because right off the bat, we're failing. Because in our society, we can't balance, right? We work more than we don't.
Yeah.
It's just who we are. And then in the sports industry, on top of that, we work more.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're already starting off unbalanced, and we're never going to achieve balance. So we're constantly failing every single week. And how does that feel? It feels terrible, right? So after we establish the lexicon and we use a different word, like I've heard blend instead of balance, how you kind of manage your whole life rather than balance it. The next thing that I say that a lot of people don't realize is it's incredibly personal. What's important to me and how I spend time is very different than what's important to you, Casey.
Sure.
And so the way that I manage my time is going to be very different than how you manage yours.
Yeah.
And my way is not your way, and your way is not my way.
Yeah.
Right. So how I spend my time and what works well for me cannot necessarily be the path for everybody else.
Sure.
But unfortunately, you do have to have some boundaries and guardrails in life. And there is kind of a cadence that a group of people can follow. And so the third thing that I say is you truly just have to make it work. And you have to make it work for you. And for me, I was a little bit out of whack for a little bit, to be honest, and I had to recalibrate a little bit. So there was a point that I did feel a little bit out of whack, and I had to recalibrate.
Yeah.
Another time that I felt a little bit out of whack the other way, and a lot of people get shocked about this, is when I was on maternity leave twice. I was out of whack the other way because I legally could not work while taking disability. So that was really difficult for me because all I do is think about sports. And
Yeah.
all I do is think and care about, and I was in college athletics when I was on maternity leaves. All I do is think about my student athletes. So
Yeah.
how do I just disappear from their lives
Yeah.
for 3 or 4 months so that I can care for a baby? Those types of things really got me thinking. Like, how did I feel when I didn't have work? And then how did I feel when maybe I was overdoing it a little bit? And then what is best for me and my family? So it's probably not the answer you were looking for,
No, it's great.
but it's incredibly personal, right? And so I talk to a lot of young women who, might be having their first or second children, and how do you do it? And I always tell them, you do what you have to do,
Yeah.
right? It's incredibly personal. You may want to be on the road again.
Yeah.
You may want to be working 60 hours again, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
That's no reflection on who you are as a mom or who you are as a partner, right? It's just what makes you happy. And
Yeah.
that's what you in yourself have to figure out and play with a little bit.
Yeah.
I figured it out. Luckily right now we're humming with the age that our kids are, the situations that both my husband and I in our work life, we both work from home. So we worked it out so that we're very present. We still coach teams. We still pick up the kids from school. We still do all of that. And it allowed, and we still have very successful careers.
Love it. Quick follow up to that. Just in regards to, when you noticed you were maybe too much one way or too much the other way, what does that inventory look like? Like, did you reach a point where you're like, hey, I need to step back, take inventory, and make change? How can
Mhm.
someone who's maybe in that space take inventory of, hey, maybe I'm getting a little bit too much this way or a little bit too much that way, to then adjust to that?
That's a great question. I would say let's talk about so we talked about kind of two extremes. Let's talk about the extreme where maybe you need to take a step back.
Mm.
That is truly something that you got to listen to your body, and you got to listen to the people around you.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we get so tunnel vision, especially if we're on a project. We just have to get to this, to this, to this. And the way that life always goes is there's really never an end, right? There's always going to be the next thing that you put yourself in. So, listen to the people around you. That's really important. If you start to hear a pattern amongst your family and your friends, perhaps you should take a step back and try to take a breath, right?
Yeah.
And then number two is, what is your body telling you? Are you
Yeah.
getting sick all the time? Are you super tired? Do you feel like you're maybe a little bit short with people? You come home and you don't have the bandwidth to be kind to the people that love you the most. Those are the kind of inventory pieces. I mean, I'll be very vulnerable with you. Sometimes I would come home and not have the emotional bandwidth
Sure.
for my own family.
Sure.
And there's something there that needs to be reflected upon.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, when you don't, maybe you're feeling like, I need something else, or let's just say that maybe like, this isn't my passion, I need to find something else. You'll know, right?
Yeah.
You'll know that one, and that's where you kind of start to figure out, what brings me joy. Where do I feel the most content? I don't love to use the word happy, because happy is just as fleeting as sad, right? And so you really want that kind of long-term contentment or joy. What do you want to get up every day and read read about every
Yeah.
single day before you hit the pavement? And it's super important to know what you don't like,
Yeah.
right? So you've heard me say that before as well. And I'm doing some career coaching right now, and I talk to my students about that. I said, look, right now, let's just find out what's like the least worst, right? Like, let's just order up the things. Like, what do you hate the least, right? And we can start to cross things off.
Yeah.
And then we can start to figure out, okay, there is a way that you can do things that you actually enjoy doing, and that you can make a career out of it.
Yeah.
But let's not try to fit something. If you are not a math person, I am not a science person. Why on earth was I a science major when I first started college? Like, let's just go ahead, call a spade, and move
Yeah.
on. It's okay to say that you're not great at everything. So, those are some of the ways that helped me. And it's just kind of like listening to your body and understanding, and then listening to the people around you and really trying to hear them, not as criticism, but rather as, hey, we just want to let you know this feels a little bit out of whack, and perhaps maybe we should talk about it.
Great insight there for sure. Bringing it home, final few questions, more fun, lighthearted questions. Except the first one, I don't feel as lighthearted, but still in the box.
Okay.
What is the most heartwarming or memorable sport moment you witnessed or experienced? Maybe something we as the casual fan would never see on TV, but you had the chance to witness or experience.
So this is a great question. For me, I'm not going to give you, okay, I'm going to give you two things. I'm going to give you like a general, I love when I see,
Yeah,
and then I'm going to give you one specific thing
love it.
that will probably embarrass this person, but that's okay. Probably will never watch this anyway. I love to see behind the scenes coaches and student athletes, or coaches and athletes with their families after a victory.
Okay.
That's my favorite thing to see. Those families, those are the people that sacrifice, right, a lot to see this success.
Yeah.
And when I see a coach with his or her spouse after a huge victory, and just that moment between the two of them of like, oh, man, we did it. It was worth it. Or the little kids running around, or parents to an athlete. I love those moments that you don't get to see that sometimes happen back of house. Those are moments, because I love experiences and I love that kind of thing. You know, you put like a song to that, and you know, you've got a heck of a montage, right?
Yeah.
One of my favorite moments back to experiences that nobody saw and no one knew about was at the college football playoff national championship here in Los Angeles, January 9th, 2023. Georgia had just won. The stage was still set up for the trophy presentation, but everybody had gone. People on the field at this point were really just administrators, people that worked the game, taking their photos, collecting their confetti. And I look up and I see that there's some kind of commotion up on the stage. And I realize that somebody that I had worked with the entire year, who was on the college football playoff staff, was proposing to his girlfriend. And he had worked with the entire game presentation staff and on the SoFi Stadium video boards. That's big and time. You know, the big center hung. Luckily she said yes, and they are now married, but that is a moment that you would never know about that happened. And it was really fun. And so everyone gathered together, his colleagues and the people that he had been working with, and celebrated that love. So that was really cool.
That's a big one,
especially
with the video board. I have not.
I know.
That's good.
Yeah, very good.
The video board at SoFi is a big get for sure.
It is a big. I mean, it was pretty cool. I have to admit, it was pretty cool.
If you could switch roles with any athlete for one day, who would it be and why?
You know, this. I don't have like to be honest, I don't have like a set athlete that I would want to switch with. I think being an athlete is incredibly difficult. And I think the demands on your body and your mind are really hard. And I don't want to be that. And I don't have an answer for this. I truly don't. I would probably tell you kind of more who my sports business icons would be, and like Val Ackerman, for example, the commissioner of the Big East, people like that. Those are people that I've never met before, but that I look at and I'm just like, wow, you are pioneers of the industry. Those are the people that I kind of are my kind of all moments. And then randomly, I'm a Pelotoner, so I follow those instructors religiously, as most people know about me. And so if I could really meet anyone or switch spots with anyone, it's one of those kind of like fitness instructors. Because I think their platform is vast, and the way that they help people change their lives is really inspirational.
All right. Peloton instructor. Definitely have not heard that one in podcast history, so that will go down in the books. Next question. If you could choose one song to play every time you walked into a room, what would you choose and why would you choose it?
So my favorite song of all time, the one that makes me smile, is September by Earth, Wind & Fire. And that is one that I don't know that I necessarily say what I would play every time I walk in, but it is one that would put an instant smile on my face. I would also say that there's probably about 10 Taylor Swift songs that I could mention for any like various life stages that we don't have to go into. But if we're like getting down and dirty and we are about to either hit a really tough project or about to do a really hard workout or something like that, my go-to is Formation by Beyonce. That will get anybody hype. Even you, Casey.
All right, I'll have to listen and I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Final question. You've talked a lot about how does you love the experience of sports and sporting events, how you've got to experience some amazing events with your husband as well as with your kids. Curious if there's a personal sports memory that's maybe left the most lasting impact on you, not necessarily when you worked, again, maybe one you attended with your family, just kind of one that really sticks out in the sports world.
I always go back to my first major event that I ran. I think my son was 6 months old, so we have pictures of him toddling along. The first major event that I ran is the Sweet 16 Elite 8, the Division I men's basketball West Regional Championship. It had not been in Los Angeles for 20-something years, and as a team of Los Angeles Sports and Entertainment Commission and Pepperdine University as the host institution, we came together as a city and we brought NCAA basketball back to LA. And that first shot at it was in 2013. It was a moment that I will never forget because it also launched my career in major event operations. It was my first. It is what brought me to Pepperdine University, where I had 9 or 10 long years as a college athletics administrator. Such a pivotal point in my career. It also provided a laboratory for several students who got to work that event. And it was the first major event that they ever experienced. And it's what I like to call an inflection point. And you've heard me talk about inflection point before, Casey, but it is a point in your life. It is an experience in your life as a young person that changes the trajectory, hopefully for the better. And there is a long list of students who have worked that event and several events after that have gone on to be incredibly successful, not only in the sports world, but in careers outside of sport. But it was because of that week, that coming together and working that event together, that it kind of changed the trajectory of their career. So that is the event for me that means the most because it launched so many people and it launched my own career.
Yeah. Love it. Transaction point. I'll use that. That's good.
That's right. Inflection point.
Oh, inflection. Not transaction. I just made up that word. Inflection point. Create inflection points for others.
That's right. You got it, Casey.
Love it. Well, Karina, thank you so much for taking some time to be on the podcast, walking through your journey in sports to where you're at now, launching your own thing and being a professor, as we mentioned in the beginning, at Cal Lutheran. And thank you for being a part of Suits and Stadium podcast.
Thank you, Casey. I appreciate it. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you for watching another episode of the Suits in the Stadium podcast. You can still find the audio version of our podcast wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, and many more. New this season, you can find the video version of our podcast on our YouTube channel. Please make sure, if you haven't already, to follow us across social media platforms, including LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. We release new episodes every Monday, so make sure you subscribe so you never miss a single episode. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next one.